Ma'am, we have evidence of Russia's possible cooperation with Iran in the capture of Eli Volk.
You really didn't want to be right about that.
This is a direct transfer from the State Bank of Iran to a private account traced to President Salnikov. The payment appears to be connected to a recent deal for Russia to develop Iranian oil fields.
This is our opportunity.
How is this man's death an opportunity?
Because the white man's hatred.
If asked, you ought to say no comment.
Commissioner, your computer is online and your secure phone is confirmed and ready for use.
Thank you, Inspector. How'd we do?
Record best time for the weekday scenario.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to Fridays After 5, presented by Chase at VMFA. First Fridays, this week we are featuring someone very special to me, Mr. Clifton Davis. We are beginning our line of Black History Month programming with this interview, and we'll have a whole month of programs on this line of programming as well as others, so stay tuned to the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts website and our social media feeds. Before we get into our interview with Clifton, he's a very dear friend of my family, especially to my uncle, Victor LeGrand Brooks Sr. And ahead of this, Clifton, I was telling you, my grandfather was remembering your father very fondly from their time working together here in Richmond when my grandfather was a minister and your father his head elder. You are very strongly connected and loved by this family of mine, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you, Robert, and thank you, and I'm honored to get the invitation to share with the Virginia Museum of Fine Art.
Absolutely, you've been on my mind since the day they asked me to take this position, and I'm glad we're finally here. Before we get into a conversation where we're going to walk through together your career and the impact your art has had on the landscape of performing arts and also on yourself, would you take a moment to describe for those watching who do not already know who Clifton Davis is in your own words?
Clifton Davis is an actor, singer, composer, producer, and minister. I'm an artist who had the privilege of utilizing the craft and gift that God has given me throughout my life, and finally being fulfilled as a human being when I met a man named Jesus. Then it all came together. I didn't have the success after that I had before, but I had peace. And I wouldn't trade my peace of mind for any success, film role, or what have you. Clifton Davis is an artist who has been proud to share his art for the last 53, 54 years. I had many opportunities early on. I made the most out of them, but they weren't fully satisfying until I found spiritual peace, a relationship with God that took me to places I had never been and showed me a measure of love that went beyond my understanding. Wow. And after, just like Moses, who threw down his rod and picked up a snake, and when he threw it down again, and God said, "Pick it up," it was no longer Moses' rod in his hand. It was God's rod in Moses' hand. So my art, after I threw it down and picked it up, became God's art in my hand. And I've trusted him to lead me through each of those experiences. Some good, some bad. It's been imperfect, but it's been beautiful. But that's who I am. I am an artist who loves the Lord.
That's powerful, Clifton, as am I. And I get a lot of that from Uncle Victor and from my grandfather. And I imagine you all inspire yourselves even today still. So early on in your life, as you were developing as a boy and turning into a man, where along the way do you develop the interest in the performing arts?
That's fascinating. Truth is, it was at a place, my high school, when I went to the ninth grade at a place called Pine Forge Academy in Pottstown, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I know it well.
And it was there as a freshman that I decided to compete in the talent show. And I had a boy soprano voice at the time. And my freshman year, I had sung in public school a song called, let's see, what was it? Angels, something about the angels. And I sang this song, Mighty Like a Rose, which has a terrible lyric. Something about looking at his mammy.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Anyway, I sang this song and won the talent contest because all the senior girls really liked the cute little kid with the soprano voice. So I guess that's where it started. I had been singing before that in church, and I led all of the what we used to call song service in our church school. And in church school, before we went to our lesson study, we had to learn and sing various hymns from one of the church's hymnals, the youth hymnal. And I learned all of those songs because my mother played the piano in church. And so I knew the songs, and they said, well, Clifton, you know the songs. Why don't you lead everyone? So starting in the ninth grade at Pine Forge Academy, I led song service.
Where was the church then? Was the church on campus built, or was the pavilion built?
The pavilion was not built. There was a little chapel down the hill, which is no longer there. But it was a charming little chapel with a red door.
Oh boy.
And it's filled with memories for me.
I don't think I ever knew that chapel. The pavilion was good and strong by the time I stepped foot on that campus. I didn't attend myself, but my mother reminded me in the past few days that she graduated from Pine Forge Academy with your brother in class with her. Yes, Carlisle. Yes, she was remembering him as a fine musician while they were attending school together.
Indeed, indeed. He's a lovely man now. He lives he just moved to North Carolina. He's retired.
Okay. Well, give him my mother's love. She passes that along to him. Is there anything else significant to you about Pine Forge Academy? It was Pine Forge Institute at that time, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. It was called Pine Forge Institute. I liked that name, but it sounded more like a mental hospital, I guess. So they changed the name to accommodate the academy status. Pine Forge was a life-changing experience for me. There are many seminal moments in my life, and Pine Forge Academy was one of them. I left there in my sophomore year, and I came back in my junior and senior year. Had a difficult relationship with my father. And my mother was working 2 jobs to help keep me in school, and I had to spend all my holidays on campus taking care of furnaces and shoveling coal. I was the only kid in the dorm, and but I found it gave me an opportunity to develop, to try things, to explore. I was on my own, walking across the hills from building to building to shovel coal to keep the pipes from freezing. And I learned about Demosthenes, who put marbles or something in his mouth to help him speak more clearly. And with my voice changing and everything, I decided I wanted to be an orator. And so I would do speeches and poems as I marched across the mountain, the hills, to North Hall, to the cafeteria, to various places.
Things you recited or things you were just thinking?
Things I recited. Things that I learned, poems that I learned and recited, tongue twisters. at any rate, um, I learned to be independent. I learned that it takes hard work to get to where you want to be. I learned sometimes you have to travel alone.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end, in my senior year, I started a quartet called the Chapel Four. And that quartet became a tradition at the school, Pine Forge Academy, for more than 10 years. And our quartet became the go-to quartet that went on tour with the choir each year when we went on choir tour. But more than that, because of the oratory, I won the oratorical contest for the school, and I became the man.
That big man on that big campus. That is a
And then
gorgeous
I
thing.
came in second on the national.
Oh, congratulations.
Didn't quite win the national, but I got a beautiful Bulliver watch.
Well, that's awesome. It sounds like you learned a good, solid work ethic that must have poured over into your career that has lasted decades.
It has, and I've kept that thing going. I am so serious about the work that I have to do. And let's face it, when you're a professional actor, your memory is essential. It's key. You must be able to remember lines. You must be able to remember positions and props and expressions and character names and, you know, just everything. And
Story you're trying to
when
tell.
you're in a theater, you have to remember the entire script.
Yeah, that theater has been most of my acting experience. I don't have quite the film or stage resume that you have. After you leave Pine Forge, I know you move on to Oakwood College. It probably was then, Oakwood University now. And how soon after Oakwood, or is it while you're in Oakwood, that you get the opportunity to move on to Motown?
Well, there was a bit of a jog in between. I worked hard at Oakwood to matriculate in 1963, but I ran out of money, and the money I made at the cleaners where I worked, and I was a busboy at a local country club, that didn't make enough money.
Hard worker.
Yeah, and so I decided I would go home at Christmas holidays and try to save up some money and come back. Well, I got home and decided the best way for me to make some money real fast was to join the United States Air Force. So in January of 1964, I joined the U.S. Air Force, and I flew off to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, for my basic training.
Right.
While I was there, during the 4th or 5th week of training, I was just about to leave, and they were sending me to Officers Candidate School to learn intelligence. I wanted to fly helicopters. Oh, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Anyway, I scored well on the test, but they found a murmur in my heart that got me mustered out on a medical. I got to tell you, Robert, I was depressed about that because I was about to fulfill a couple of dreams. I'd always wanted to fly, and I wanted to succeed in the Air Force. I was gung-ho. But they put me out with a medical discharge. So I got depressed and started hanging out with old friends, and we went from job to job, and I moved into Philadelphia with some buddies, and we lived a wild 20-year-old life.
Why not? As you should.
And I went to work for a White Castle hamburger joint.
Okay.
And they wanted me to do a medical examination before they would let me cook burgers. why am I talking about this? How did this come up?
Walking down memory lane, that's what we're here for.
Anyway, I went to the doctor, and the doctor said, "Oh my goodness, you have a bad heart." And I said, "So tell me something I didn't know."
Yeah.
I said, "That got me put out of the Air Force." And so he said, "Well, you know, you can get that taken care of here with the state." And I said, "What do you mean?" He told me about a program that would accommodate a young person like me who had been working in Philadelphia for more than 2 years, or 2 years, and that there was state accommodations that would pay for my open heart surgery, particularly since it was experimental.
Right. Wow.
Well, I accepted the offer. I went in and I had open heart surgery in January of 1965. And it turned my life around. My heart, which had been bad all through my youth, I knew it was bad when I went in the Air Force, so I got in anyway. They fixed it. And I started to live like a brand new life. You know, I went from job to job to job. Before I knew it, I was working as a video engineer in Long Island, New York. And I got a job at ABC Television in New York as a video engineer. And then I saw a Broadway show that I had never seen one. And it so impacted me. I got bit really bad. And I said, I have got to try this. I have got to do this. It was so amazing. There's a show called Apple Tree with Alan Alda and Barbara Harris. Wow. I'll never forget it. Years later, I got to thank him. I said, Alan, I just saw him in a show in Hollywood. And I said, I just want to thank you for doing Apple Tree because you got me in the business. And I loved, in a lovely, lovely way, he said, and I've seen your career, he said, and I'm grateful that I was able to play a role in your becoming the wonderful star you are.
Come on.
Oh, it was really nice.
Yeah.
It was so nice. He's a nice man.
I imagine he seems like it.
At any rate, I saw a Broadway show, decided I had to try it. I quit my job at ABC TV and went into summer stock theater. I started learning about the theater and things of the theater. And at the end of that summer, I auditioned for Hello, Dolly with Pearl Bailey and Cab Calloway. And I got one of the singing parts, and my career took off after that.
1967, was it, or before then?
1967.
The rest is
good research.
The rest is quite a story. So you get on stage. How do you meet Berry Gordy? How do you get the opportunity to write for the Supremes and the Jackson 5?
Well, let me give you the short version. I had worked in several Broadway shows, and in one of the Broadway shows, a pit musician named Judd Walden had written a show called Raisin, a new musical. And he asked me to do the backers auditions to help raise money.
All right.
He's heard me noodling on the piano. I'm a self-taught pianist. And he said, what is that? That sounds really nice. And I said, it's nothing. He said, you need to write that nothing down. He said, that's a song. Oh. And so with his inspiration, I took it seriously and his encouragement, and I started writing music. I wrote a couple songs, and one I wrote for the Jacksons, and I wrote one for the Supremes. Well, I started dating a lady named Melba Moore, and Melba wanted me to join her in Las Vegas where she was performing. And so I did. She was at Caesar's Palace, but I noticed that the Supremes were down the street at the Frontier. So I said, you know what, Melba, I'd seen her show. I said, I'm going to go over and see the Supremes, because I had met them at the Apollo in New York. So I knocked on their door and went backstage, and they went, hi, Clifton, how are you? I said, I'm fine. Listen, I wrote a song for you guys. oh, would you mind if I played it? They said, hey, there's a piano right there. Let us hear it. So I played a song called Here Comes the Sunrise. And they said, oh, I like that. That's nice. You know, Gene Terrell, Mary Wilson. It was great. And so they said, our producer's coming in tomorrow. You going to be in town? I'd like you to play it for him. So the next day I stayed in Vegas. I played the song for their producer and Frank Wilson, and he loved it and said, I'll take it. And that's how I started getting into Motown. Well, a couple of months later, right as they moved from Detroit to Hollywood, they asked me to fly out, sign the contract. So I flew into Hollywood. I went up to Motown. I signed the contract for Here Comes the Sunrise for the Supremes. And a producer popped his head in the door named Hal Davis, who produced the Jackson 5. I said, hey, you got 5 minutes? I got a song for you. So I sat down at the piano. I played the song. Hal said it's a smash. I love it. And he took it. And Michael learned Never Could Say Goodbye.
A song we all know and love very, very well. Grammy nomination for this one.
Yes, actually it was Isaac Hayes who got the Grammy nomination for me. I thought it was Michael. Then I looked in the papers and I said, oh, look at that. Michael had the hit. It went to number 2, but Isaac Hayes got the Grammy nomination for his version.
He got the accolade. And many people covered it, including the very dear Victor Brooks Jr., recording it on Samba Soul. I think he did down in Brazil. We're going to revisit Brazil in just a little bit. That's fantastic. Looking in the window.
I love Victor Brooks Jr. I love you, Vic. I love Chris and Julie. I love the whole family.
You know,
Vic is one of my favorite singers ever.
I've got him listed to come out here next summer to give a concert. I'll let you know when that's going to be. The inaugural episode of Fridays After 5, my inaugural episode of this very series, Fridays After 5, presented by Chase, features Julie's eldest son, Ryan McKnight Jr. Is on that one. He started this off for us. Got us ready for some great
I'm proud
company.
to be among his mentors.
Yeah, he speaks about you fondly as well. We may have mentioned you on that program. But looking in the windows, another gorgeous Jackson 5 cover. As I listen to it, it sounds like it's maybe the earliest, but certainly an early example of young Michael Jackson's voice changing and developing that rich tenor we get to learn the adult Michael Jackson had all along. Did you do that on purpose? Did you recognize the changing voice, or was it just a coincidence?
To be honest with you, I didn't deal with that aspect of his vocal prowess.
Mm-hmm.
Berry Gordy asked me when we were finalizing Never Can Say Goodbye. By the way, that's how my first encounter with Berry was. He was asking me to edit the song.
Mm-hmm.
And a good man. Anyway, he said, tell Clifton I want this song to go up right here. I want it to go up. I said, go up? I said, if the boss wants the song to go up, guess what? This song going up. So it was, even though the pain and heartache seem to follow me wherever I go, though I try to hide my feelings, they always seem to show. Then he wanted it to go up. So I said, so we try to say you're leaving me, and I always have to say no.
Tell me why.
Yeah. And Barry loved it. And I was in the studio that night when Michael laid down the final take.
Mm.
And wow,
That had to be a night.
it was special. It was special.
Well, congratulations for that great work. And you must have a lot of fond memories from that time. The next year.
And looking through the windows was a song that wasn't quite finished. But Hal Davis flew to New York and sat down on the piano bench next to me and said, what you got? What you got? he wanted more songs, and I was trying to write them out fast, but I'm not as prolific as Stevie Wonder, so I had fewer songs.
Yeah.
But he took them, and he took looking through the windows, and said, "I love it. Let's do it." And it came out of an experience that I had with Melba Moore, when I saw her getting ready to cry, and I went down, sat on the piano, and wrote that song to cheer her spirits. So, yeah, we had a good relationship. It was a very public relationship on television. We
Yeah,
had a
Melba Moore,
television
Clifton
show in
Davis show.
1972,
Yes, sir.
and it was a blessing. We've been, we had our rocky roads, but we've been good buddies and friends for a number of years, and she's a believer as well.
1972, we also see you on stage in Two Gentlemen of Verona, receiving a Tony nomination for your work there. The Melba Moore, as you were mentioning just now, the Melba Moore Clifton Davis show airs in 1972 as well. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely correct. It was an exciting time. It was perhaps one of the most, explosive times of my life in terms of emotions, in terms of success, in terms of eye-opening experiences, in terms of leaps forward and upward for my career. A Tony nomination, a television series, a hit song on the radio. Oh my goodness, I was riding the whirlwind.
In that time, you began your career in 1967. What was the community of performing artists or just the world like for a rising star in the Black community?
First of all, it was very, very difficult to even get noticed. It was difficult because there weren't enough projects for Black artists to be a part of. It was difficult because once you got in, you had to play the game, go along with the program, keep your mouth shut. If you complained too much, you were out of the business. You had to wait for your moment and make the most out of it. And when you spoke up, you had to speak up wisely in order to keep from destroying your own career. So it was a challenging time. As you know, Dr. King was killed in in 68, and the world kind of went upside down. But in the arts, we kept fighting. We kept fighting, always knowing we had to be better than the other guy. We had to be better than the rest in order to succeed. And only once in a while did they give an opportunity for a Black actor to star.
Yeah.
Only rarely. I'm proud to be one of the pioneers.
Yeah.
I was on the third series, modern series, with Black lead actors. The other was Sanford and Son, and before that, Julia. So Julia, then Sanford and Son, and then the Jeffersons came after that. Oh, I think That's My Mama came before the Jeffersons. Yeah.
1974. That's My Mama gets the TV, I think.
74.
I think so.
So there weren't very many of us.
Right.
And there were only 3 major networks. So it was a challenging time. It was an exciting time. I wish somebody had been there to mentor me to say, pull it together. This is a golden opportunity. Don't blow it with wild and crazy behavior. Well, I blew it with wild and crazy behavior.
Well, you keep your career coming. That's My Mama ends in 1975, but by 77, Scott Joplin, alongside Billy D. Williams.
Yes, I kept the career going for quite a while.
Yeah.
And before I had to reset. Working with Billy D was an amazing experience. Funny thing is, the woman who played his wife in Scott Joplin, King of Ragtime, was Margaret Avery.
Okay.
Margaret Avery and I just played husband and wife in a new Zoom movie we just finished called We Are Gathered Here Today, which is coming out very soon. So I ran into her. She looks wonderful. She's just as sweet as she can be. And we had fond memories from those days filming that television movie. It was nice to be around Billy D, and he was a good mentor, kind man.
I have a lot of people, I'm sure, envy you. I'm sure a lot of people envy the time you got to spend in the room with Mr. Williams. Not long after that, though, you get an opportunity to perform alongside Lena Horne.
Yes, the great one. She is one of the most phenomenal human beings I've ever met. And I didn't really appreciate the measure of her magnitude until after we ended our work together. And I did a little more research on what she had been through in order to make it in the business. First of all, it was a privilege just to work with Lena Horne. I learned a great deal in that year we spent together. But afterwards, I began to realize what her work ethic was like. And I respected and appreciated all of that even more. It was an amazing year working with a glorious, and can you imagine being on stage next to Lena Horne while she's singing Bewitched, Bothered, and Bewildered
I can only
every
dream.
night to a house packed with 1,900 people? Oh,
I can only dream of that, Clifton.
It was fabulous.
I believe every minute of that. I believe every minute of that. Man, I'm jealous of it. I'm jealous of that. I mean, Lena Horne's one of the absolute greats. She's an idol for so many. And what a blessing it must have been to get a chance to be in the room with her. Now we're getting to, well, many other things happen, but now we're getting to where I get to know Mr. Clifton Davis. My earliest memories of television are of gathering with my family around the television in the living room, wherever we are, to watch Amen. Thank you for that work. Oh my goodness, do I have fond memories of seeing Mr. Davis up on that screen. What can you tell me about the creation of that show?
I got to tell a quick story. In 1980, I came to my crossroads and realized that something had to change or I wasn't going to make it. So I took a leave of absence from the entertainment business and I went into the church. I discovered a relationship with God Almighty through Jesus Christ. And it was that relationship that saved my life. The lovely thing about it is I turned my back on show business for as long as it needed to be turned. But five and a half years later, God opened the door again. And when God opens the door, you need to go right on through it.
All through.
So I was finishing my master's degree at Andrews University. And I opted that spring, second spring there, to do all of my finals as an essay or a written exam.
Right.
So I didn't have to sit for the exams on exam day. And wouldn't you know, I got a call from Hollywood that found me in Michigan and invited me to fly out to Hollywood to screen test for a show called Amen. And the screen test took place on the day scheduled for the examination.
Look at God, ain't that what they say?
Which I didn't have to be there for. Yeah. I didn't have to attend. So I got on a plane, I went out to Hollywood. They were looking for a young minister who just finished his seminary. And guess what I was? A young minister who had just finished the seminary. Wow, God is amazing. The way he
Absolutely. I mean, those are my earliest memories of television. The theme song, watching you come out, the hilarity of the show, watching the adults split their sides, enjoying the evening. So I think that I always remember that greatly, and every time I think of you, I think of that, and then I think of being scared of you in Lewisburg, North Carolina, in Uncle Victor's kitchen. No reason to be scared, but intimidated out of my mind.
Oh,
Back then,
I loved hanging out with the Brookses out there. You were one of those kids out there?
I was one of those kids. One of those kids running around down there with my mom and my Uncle Sean. It was a great time. Well, I mean, I want to skip a little bit ahead further, Clifton, because I want to get a chance to cover what you're working on more recently. But along the way, you keep popping up in shows like Living Single or the Jamie Foxx Show or Gregory Hines Show. What a great program that was. And then, but more recently, we can see your work in Iron Fist and in Madam Secretary and in The Godfather of Harlem with Forrest Whitaker. What can you tell me about this sort of more steady and more regular views of Clifton Davis on television that you're enjoying now?
It's sort of winding down for me. I had a wonderful run for 4 years on Broadway in Disney's Aladdin,
Yes.
where I played the Sultan.
Oh,
And simultaneous to playing the Sultan on Broadway, I played the Director of National Intelligence on Madam Secretary. Now, it was a recurring role. I only did 10, 11 shows a season. Season was 22 shows. And it was so wonderful that what was supposed to be 1 or 2 shows turned out to be 5 years of shows, 40-some shows. So I just thank God for that opportunity. And then as I left Disney's Aladdin, and finally we wrapped up the 6th season of Madam Secretary, I got an audition to play a historical character, and it was a challenge that I had never had to meet in my previous career. And so my wife and I began to study. She's my coworker. She helps me learn my lines, and
Gotta have
a
help.
camera person and lighting person. And to ask her, she's my director as well.
You better believe her then. You better believe her.
Hey, I trust her.
yeah.
I trust her more than anyone on the earth. Um,
Love.
and I rehearsed, and I got this chance to do the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I was rushing out to Hollywood to do another show called, I can't even remember the name of it, a comedy. Anyway, I had to catch a plane early in the morning, so I didn't have time to do 3 scenes. So I said, you know what? I'm going to do 1 scene. I'm going to send it to them. If they like it, they want more, I'll do another scene. So I did the 1 scene, edited it, sent it off to them, jumped on a plane. When I got off the plane in Hollywood, they told me I had the part of Elijah Muhammad. And so what was supposed to be 1 episode, maybe 2, turned into 3 last season. And thus far this year, for season 2, I've done 2 of the episodes so far. It's a wonderful thing to be chosen to extend the length and breadth of your career by expanding it to include something you've never done before. And so I'm pretty proud of the work I've done portraying this historical character.
Clifton, I am going to take that encouragement. I don't know if you know you are giving to me right now. What we're doing right now is an exercise in newness for me. I mean, I'm an opera singer. The art of the interview is something I'm figuring out even as we're speaking right now. So this new door for a new career has been exciting and scary and challenging. But I like the challenge. I like what I'm learning. Puts me in front of people like you. You know, and more than just being
Let me
scared.
encourage you. Let me join the chorus who are encouraging you to go for it. Please go for it.
Thank you.
Don't let anything hold you back. God gave you that gift to be used, so use it.
Take my cue from folks like you. Let's return to music, if you don't mind, for a while, Clifton, because I know very recently you released another studio album. What can you tell me about that project? A return to jazz.
You know, something in my artistic wavelength liberated me and said, you know, you're getting older. if you want to do something and you think it'll be a contribution to the library of music that floats around this planet, do it.
Yeah.
Like I'm telling you, just do it. You know, don't listen to all the naysayers or people who find petty reasons for you not to. Just do it. Well, I went to hear some music because I love jazz piano music. And I heard a lady named B.G. Adair at the Birdland in New York, and she was so phenomenal and sweet as all get out. So after her show, I went up, met her. We hit it off, told how much we loved her, Monica and I. And then she wanted to see Aladdin. So we hooked up tickets for her to see Aladdin. And then we went out to dinner and said, you know, maybe we should do a project together. My wife may have recommended it first.
Their manager.
Yeah. And she agreed. And so after a while, we put some songs together. We flew down to Nashville. We recorded it. And then we listened to it a little longer and said, well, let's add just another touch. And I have a dear friend named Take Six.
Oh, yeah. Me too.
I have dear friends named Take Six.
That's that Oakwood connection audience. Yeah.
Alvin, all of them.
Uh-huh.
And it was wonderful. And I called Mark and said, you know, I'd like to add some vocals to Never Can Say Goodbye. And Claude said, yeah, if you let us do Never Can Say Goodbye, we'll do the vocals.
Uh-huh.
So I said, yes, I'll certainly want you to do that. And then Mark did so many other arrangements for me for my album. So I'm really proud of this work. Clifton Davis with the B.G. Adair Trio. And I had a little help from Take Six and some other artists who are just wonderful. So I hope you like it. I'm going to share some of that music with you on this broadcast.
Yes, we're going to get a couple of the tracks from that album. Would you like to tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, a lot of people know I wrote a song called Never Can Say Goodbye and Looking Through the Windows, Uppermost on My Mind, but I've been continually writing. So I thought I'd choose one of the recent compositions to include on this album called Never Can Say Goodbye. And one of those songs is a song called Swept Away. And it's just an old-fashioned Brazilian love song.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love it. So I wanted to share it with our audience, and it's called Swept Away.
We're looking forward to it.
The other song that I want to share with you is a song that was written by B.G. Adair. As a composer, she's quite the consummate artist as well. She and Laurie Meacham wrote a lovely song called Minha Alma, which means my spirit. And it too is a song about love. And I'd like to share that with your audience.
I would love to hear it now.
I'm swept away by the sweet and tender things you say, and my heart is feeling captured in your spell. Ooh, I hope and pray that you'll welcome all the love I send your way. My mind is reeling like a crazy carousel. what it seems. But the ocean is vast, so deep and wide. I am swept away inside. I'm swept away like a feather floating on the bay by your eyes that shine like starlight when you smile. Swept away on a sea of dreams. I'm in love, that's what it seems. But the ocean is vast, so deep and wide. I am swept away on the tide. I should flee, but I can't see the shore. Heart beware, dangers in the air. No matter what's in store, my heart wants more. Swept away on a sea of dreams. So in love, that's what it seems. But the ocean is vast, so deep and wide. I'm swept away on the tide. Swept away on the sea of dreams. I'm in love, that's what it seems. But the ocean is vast, so deep and wide. I am swept away inside. Inside. Your eyes were dark and deep as the sea. Your smile, your arms, shelter for me. What a wondrous way to fall in love. I keep the memory of a night as warm and soft as a kiss. No moon, no stars ever like this. Oh, how lovely still each memory. Here in my heart alone, I still hear the music we dream, we dance.
for that, Clifton. Now, I understand you're working on another project coming out down in Brazil with Zé Ricardo, another connection to Victor Brooks and to this family of mine. Tell me about this project.
Zé Ricardo. Actually, I love Zé Ricardo. He is such a wonderful, talented musician. And because I met him, because of the relationship that we struck up, I introduced him to Victor Brooks Jr., and they hit it off like two brothers from another mother. And they performed together in Brazil over the years. I flew in many times just to see Zé Ricardo and Victor Brooks Jr. perform in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and in Rio de Janeiro. However, I moved on to Salvador, Bahia, and I met a wonderful man there named Jota Veloso. He is the nephew of a legend known as Caetano Veloso. And Caetano Veloso is a great singer, and Jota and I became friends and decided to do a Brazilian project together. So we co-produced it, and I've kept it in a drawer for a little while, but I'm ready to release it finally. And so this spring, I'm releasing the album called, I think we're going to call it a Brazil Jam.
I love that.
Something like that.
Do you know about when in the spring we can look for that?
Yeah, you can look for that in April.
April. Oh, I know.
Yeah.
I'll be keeping my eye out for it.
Yeah, we'll have our press people on it in February, but it'll be a release date in April.
I'm gonna look out. I don't want to miss the opportunity to pick up my copy as soon as I have the chance.
Well, I'm singing a lot of the songs in Portuguese, and I've done 3 or 4 in English, but 7, 8 in Portuguese. And it's my homenagem, which means homage, to the great songwriters, the great sambistas, to say, the great songwriters of Brazil. And we did some of their favorites, some of their standards.
We'll look forward to learning from you more about Brazilian jazz and your take on it. Well, Clifton, we're coming to the end of our time together, of our conversation. I've really enjoyed walking through your career with you and learning more about you myself and teaching my audience more about you as we go. Before we wrap up, can I trouble you for just another piece of wisdom? As you look back through your career, I think about artists like yourself, and Nina Simone comes to my mind every day, and she teaches us that it's the artist's responsibility to put a time mark to history, to capture it, to tell the stories, to be the voice of people. In your career, how have you noticed that same thing, that artists are recording history of that age and capturing the moment so that we can remember and reflect on it as we develop?
You need to help me understand what you're really asking there. Can you articulate that just a little differently?
Yes, absolutely, Clifton. Through your long career, how do you notice, or how have you noticed the artists like yourself, or like Stevie Wonder, or like Pollock, grappling with the current situation of that day, of that age, telling its story with truth and with honesty, and then now that we're decades later, looking back at those things that are history. Our history books are markers of the truth, painful or happy, whatever it is, but we capture it. How have you done that? How have you noticed it? And how powerful is the artist in that respect?
You mentioned Stevie Wonder. He perhaps is the most prolific social writer of our time. And he has a poetic way of addressing some of the real tragedies that we see in our lives. Some of our contemporary composers deal with issues like George Floyd's passing, deal with songs that are released now called I Can't Breathe. During my time, what we did, be it right, be it wrong, was we took a look at what was going on And we tried to find a way to say something about it without tearing up the fabric of our success.
Right.
We were too often too cautious. The people who threw caution to the wind, they got their point made, but they may have cut themselves off from the audience.
Right.
I think the most insightful way to deal with, that we dealt with those kinds of issues was, it took a lot of clever Black people to address racism without shutting down the communication airways. To address the pain, to address it on a real level, to not worry about whose feelings were going to get hurt, but to do it so compassionately and artistically that it had to be appreciated. I think my greatest model of that was my dear friend, the late Maya Angelou. She found a way, poetically and artistically, to speak to the issues that were all around us in a way that could communicate with both Blacks and whites and could do something to uplift our condition. And she spent her life doing that. I was proud to be the star of her show, And Still I Rise, which we did in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. We also did it in Washington, D.C. And it was that kind of participation that made me feel like I'm a part of the solution. And so I encourage you to speak out, speak up. We're in a different world. People can say what they want now. In fact, the other side has gone buck wild. And so it's time for us to look with the righteousness and justice that God gives us to know that humanity must treat humanity better. And I think it's time. It's time to just go ahead and say what it is and get this stuff out of our system.
Whew! That's power. You know, I knew when Dr., Reverend, Pastor, friend Clifton Davis gets on this program, we are going to have a chill by the end of it. Thank you so much, sir, for your...
Thank you, Robert. God bless you.
God bless you as well. And to you at home, thank you for the ride with us. Thank you for loving with us, listening to us, and learning from us. And thank you for giving us your time. Again, a thank you to Clifton Davis. I look forward to touring you around this campus as soon as I can get you in Richmond, Virginia, and show you some of the things we've got working on up here. You're going to love it.
I look forward to it.
All right, you enjoy your night, Clifton. Thank you again.
God bless you, and I'm looking for that opera album.
Yes, oh my goodness. Coincidentally, on the next version of this Fridays After 5 program you're appearing on, my mom, Aletta, is going to be doing the Duraflay Piegesu with her big operatic voice. And I may do the Mendelssohn It Is Enough on that program, but
right.
I'll make sure you get to hear it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you enjoy your night, and you enjoy your night at home as well. Until next time, I'm Robert Phanord. Thank you again.